Aloha! What's up, everyone? This is JayDreamerZ, and welcome to today's topic. Today we're going to be talking about something called Vril. Now, Vril is something that's relatively new to me, but I came across it's the main theme of this book that I was reading. So I wanted to share the concept with all of you because, believe it or not, this particular word has been an influence of great power in our world over the past few centuries. And influenced our historical records. So what is Vril? What's going on in the chat? What's up to everybody? I see you cloned. Brandon, Warren Jackson, Stephanie McGuire. What's up to everybody? AZ Nature Girl, Servant and Watcher. Good to see you all. Now listen, if you want to get my attention in the chat, please just type in J. It'll highlight on my side, J-A-Y. Or you can type in @JayDreamerZ. So check this out. I've been reading this book. Now, let's start with the beginning. The beginning is that most people, when they come across this word Vril, they'll think of like the Vril Society or associate it with like the German Reich of World War II or something. That's the end of the story. That's way later on down the timeline. I want to take us back to the late 1800s. In the late 1800s, there was a book that was written. Allegedly, it was a total work of fiction. It's just a fantasy book. But it made such an impact on the readers that it changed our world and it changed our history. Hey, I just got a donation from Rampage 302. Says, thank you for enlightening the masses. You're super welcome, Rampage. Let's talk about Vril. So the book in particular is called Vril, The Power of the Coming Race. Now, because it's got the word race in it and stuff, and it's associated with, the German Reich in World War II, then it can have some negative connotations. However, I want to separate those negative connotations and from the actual word, and I want to get down to the root of where this comes from. So to do that, we have to talk about this book that was written, Vril, The Power of the Coming Race. This book was written in the late 1800s, and so I'm also checking the chat as I go. This book was written in the late 1800s, and I want to give you a breakdown, essentially just the Cliff's Notes on what it's about, okay? First and foremost, the way they spoke in the 1800s, or the late 1800s when this book was written at the least, is very eloquent. There's a huge difference between the books that were written 100 years ago and the way people spoke. They were so defined, they were so specific, and they had such a great, broad vocabulary. It's really nice to read these older books in comparison to today's vernacular that we have and that we're used to. So in this book, there's a miner. There's these guys are out mining and they go really far down. This guy and his buddy decide to go down and keep mining when everyone else is resting. They hit some sort of an opening and his buddy falls down into a cavernous opening in the earth. He turns out he's okay. He's a little injured. But he's like, lower a rope down, get me out of here, right? So his buddy lowers a rope down, he comes up, and this guy is affected all day long. His buddy, who's the protagonist of the story, notices that there's something wrong with his friend. All day long, he's been shook up since he went down inside of that cavernous opening inside of the earth. That cavernous opening was actually one of the entrances into the hollow sections of the earth itself. And when his buddy fell down... Hey, Gary Lloyd just made a donation. Says, you're awesome. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate you. So he said, bro, I'm your friend. You can tell me what happened when you fell down there. And he's like, man, I'll tell you, but I don't think you're going to believe me. Basically, that's how a lot of these stories go. You know, something insane happens to one of us, and we always get scared to tell someone because we don't think they're going to believe us. I start talking to the movies at this point. If I see this happen in the movies, I'm like, oh my God, tell somebody. You know, they always see something real weird, and then they look back and it's gone or something, and they just kind of like shake it off to themselves. I'm like, no, man, you got to share that. You got to start telling everyone what happened to you, what you saw, what you experienced. Anyhow, so this happened with this guy, and he's like, okay, I'll tell you. I don't think you're going to believe me, but I went down in there, and the cave that I fell down into had an opening, like I was at the smaller end of a funnel, and it just went out, and it opened and opened and opened, and there was this blue beam of light shooting up through another cave entrance, a huge cave entrance. And I saw lamps or lanterns or something down there, and it seemed like there was people and stuff. So his buddy's like, no way, we got to check this out. So they conspire together. And he's like, let's be brave. Let's go check it out. I'm with you, man. You're not going to do it alone. Let's go back down there and see what's going on, right? So, we got a comment in the chat from number 6 who says, I watched your channel for the first time last week and I subbed. Thank you. It was the plasma catastrophe. Right on my wavelength. Right on. Well, it's good to have you, and I'm glad you're looking into it, number 6. And, of course, we've also got Unknown. Unknown says, greetings to the Good Vibe Tribe. I just want to say you're greatly appreciated. Well, I appreciate you as well. I think we're just all coming together, right? I'm super honored whenever people pay me compliments and stuff. I'm humbled. I don't even know what to say sometimes, honestly. But I'm equally thankful for all of you out there. You all inspire me all the time. I watch the world and I see the truthers out there doing their part, researching and sharing your research. So thank all of you. So anyhow, these two guys go down into the cave, right? And the second they get down there, the first guy, the guy who initially fell, believe it or not, boom, falls again, like breaks his leg. His buddy's coming down. He's like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. He gets down there finally, and there's this giant lizard, like the size of your bedroom or something that could swallow you up and eat you whole, right? Huge, weird-looking lizard creature that's down there. He doesn't know what to do. The lizard's clearly only interested in his injured friend, so he takes off just out of instinct. He just books it. Boom. He just runs through this cavern down towards the little lanterns that he sees down there. And then he comes to his senses and he's like, oh, man, my buddy. So he goes back to try to get his buddy, but his buddy's body is gone, right? He assumes the lizard thing ate it or took it somewhere. Let's see. We got Schizo in the chat who says, Jay, have you ever tried psychedelics? No, not really. But I'm really sensitive to my physiology, my chemistry, my body. So I haven't gone down that road quite yet. It's always been a curiosity of mine, but no, I have not. Mikey AKB says, JayDreamerZ, thanks for your service. I'm a prior Marine. Me and my friend came upon your content about a month ago and we're hooked. Too much makes sense. Question everything. Well, you're very welcome. And yes, I was in the Marine Corps for some time in my youth. All right, so getting back to the story, these guys go down into the hole. One guy gets eaten by a giant reptile that's down inside of the inner earth, right? Welcome, Deborah. Inside of the inner earth. This is a concept that we have not just seen in this story, okay? And it's really interesting because these types of fictional stories came out. Many of them came out right around the same time, around the mid to late 1800s, early 1900s. They spoke about the hollow cavernous openings that are inside of the earth all of the time. If anything, there's mainstream academics up until a certain point, all across the world over, accepted that there were hollow cavernous openings that led to an interior within the earth. The idea that the earth is solid and filled with magma cores and all that kind of stuff is only relatively and comparatively a recent revelation or theory. And that even goes all the way back to, what's that scientist's name? The guy Halley, Edmund Halley, right? The guy who was named the comet after him, Halley's Comet, right? He even declared that the earth was hollow and had openings and layers inside of it and stuff. But academia came and rose to prominence and insisted that it was otherwise. Totally fine. I accept the way, that's the way the world is today in the mainstream academics. However, not so long ago, that wasn't the case. Most people agreed upon the world being hollow and open on the inside. So there were many stories about it. Not just fictional made-up stories, but real accounts of people who have gone and ventured out to these openings and gone inside of the world. This seems to be one of them. If you read it, this isn't written like a fictitious story. I know it's published under a fictitious story. And another weird thing is that the author was a very prominent member of society. He was even offered like the crown at one point. And I find it so strange that somebody of such prominence would write these sci-fi stories. You know what I mean? Without having any truth embedded in them, that they were just make-believe, fanciful tales for people to read to your kids at night or whatever. Let's see. Bradley Francis says, JayDreamerZ, if I buy a hoodie, could you sign it for me? And why do I gotta pay $2 extra for 2 extra large? Good question. So I'm going to be honest. I have merch. Okay. I'm not, I it's kind of a new thing to me. But I haven't really promoted it. So I have to double check all the merch and stuff. One of the reasons why I don't really promote the merch is because if anyone on YouTube that sells merch, you can tell it's all overpriced. T-shirts, hoodies, all that stuff. But there's some value in, the fact that it's your favorite YouTuber or somebody that you want to support or whatever it may be. So that it makes it hard for me, really. Like I'm poor myself, and it's hard for me to sell somebody else a $50 hoodie or however much they cost. I don't even know. But you make a good point, Bradley. The honest answer is I have no idea. I'm going to look into it. I'll get all the merch stuff tidied up. I've been preoccupied with my website and YouTube and some other personal things in my life, but I'll double check on it for you. All right, so back to the story, right? So this guy falls into an inner earth entrance. Now, one of the first things that he describes is he goes out from this cave and it opens up so wide, so big, that he says that when he looks far enough away, that the roof of the cave actually disappears because so much atmosphere has developed that you can't see it. You can't see the roof. It almost looks like sky down there, right? And he says when he goes down into the area where he saw those lamps, they talk about these lamps that they have down there. They have these glowing lamp-like lights all over the place. And it turns out that they're powered by this force called Vril. So this is really interesting. I've done a few videos about the Cave of Saviors or the Hollow Earth entrance at the North Pole, the plasma volcano. And I put forth and speculated a theory that it's full and filled with electromagnetic activity to include the blue beam itself, and like charged particles that float about like plasma balls and stuff. That's kind of what this sounds like to me. New Troy, Raven, what's up, Raven? Is in the chat and says, "Hey Jay, I'm here in the chat again. Love and peace right back." What's up, Dirty Boy? And we've got Shadow Law, who called in the other day. Says, JayDreamerZ, I have to find out what that word means. All right, let's talk about the meaning of the word. So, actually, I'm going to come back to the meaning in just a second because I want to talk about the first instance that they saw it. This guy goes out, and there's this huge cavernous opening that sort of juts out, right? And he says there's a blue beam. Okay, a beam of light that shoots up, that just goes all the way down inside of the earth, so far down that it gets dark, he can't even see the bottom of it, right? It's a bottomless pit, and there's this beam of light coming out of it. To me, when I'm reading that describes exactly what we've been talking about, speculating about the blue beam itself that comes from within the earth. Just like how Godzilla's home is way down inside of the earth or within Hollow Earth itself where giant creatures live. And he shoots upwards, that blue beam that shoots up. Same exact concept, right? What's up, Hawaii and Juniper Berries? Good to see you guys. All right, so this guy goes down in, he describes the blue beam. He sees some ancient architecture. The building structures down there are much different. So he's headed towards the first structure he sees. He says it resembles something close to an amalgam of the Egyptian architecture and Greco-Roman architecture, if he was to describe it the best way that he could, right? Along his way, he describes the flora and the fauna of the plants that are down growing inside of this area in this cavernous opening within the earth. Basically, he describes every single plant as being a gigantic version and slightly alien version of plants that he recognizes here. It's just that they're almost unrecognizable because they're so big and they're so filled with life. He also describes other plant life that is unrecognizable. He describes animals that are like gigantic versions of the ones that we have up here on the surface, like the elk. There's a giant elk that lives down there. There's huge reptilian type lizards that are carnivorous and stuff. And frogs, huge frogs too. You wouldn't believe it. These huge frogs, which are actually revered by the people who live down there. The beings are known as the Vril-ya. What's up, Lost Knowledge? I see you in the chat. So he goes down there. He describes the plant life. It's all way bigger than expected. It's just like an ambient light from all these little lamps that are scattered about everywhere. He goes down into there. He walks up into this strange looking architectural building. and he meets the Vril-ya. Vril-ya are the name of these beings that live down there. What's up? I just got a tip from Gary Lloyd in the chat and says, what's your view on free energy? Bro, that's exactly what we're talking about right now. This Vril is the free energy, okay? It's the energy of the earth itself. It produces energy. It makes its own energy. And we would be remiss not to tap into that for free and use it as a part of our lives. Anyhow, just like the earth supplies water for us to drink, food for us to eat, it also supplies Vril, or electromagnetics, for us to implement and use and better ourselves, which is something that the Vril-ya discovered thousands of years ago. It turns out that this race of beings who are gigantic in stature, which is common. That's about right up on par, right? That when you go inside of the earth, that you find these beings who are way larger than we are. What's up, Adam KC in the chat? Shalom to Pamela Santos. And what's up to Ron G? Good to see you guys. So he goes down in there. He meets these beings that are at least a solid 7 feet tall. You know what I mean? It's really weird to me, too, because let's talk about the Vril-ya. Those are the beings that are down inside the earth. They have mastered the use and the understanding of this form of power called Vril. Essentially, from my understanding and my reading of the book, the Vril is the blue light that he essentially sees at the beginning, that blue beam that shoots up, but they've learned to harness it. They've learned how to create it. They've learned how to draw it out of the atmosphere. They've even learned how to create staffs that are Vril staffs that contain this power, that can do many different things. We'll come back to the staffs in a bit. All right, so let's see here. So he goes down in, he meets the Vril-ya. Now, they don't know what to do. First thing they do is they touch him with one of their staffs and just put him unconscious, right? They're like, whoa, strange creature. They zap him, and they have their own form of politics and stuff like that. They're very... I wouldn't say they're as political as we are, but they have their own form of politics and stuff. So I'll talk about that in a bit as well. So they get him, and basically they're like, look at this strange creature. They would look to him like we would look to a weird-looking animal or a strange, unknown form of monkey or something that we found. You know what I mean? Or like if we came across like a pygmy, or like this guy was a wonder. He was a human being. He came down into their world, and they could tell he was humanoid, but they considered him to be closer to like an animal, essentially. So they need to figure out, is he a dangerous animal? Because if he is a dangerous animal, their policy is to exterminate on sight, right? They take their Vril staffs, put it on a certain setting, boom, like fry it, essentially. It explodes. Well, I wouldn't say it explodes. It's the way they describe the Vril staffs when they use them as weapons. There's different settings on them, and one of the more destructive settings essentially sounds like it is like akin to spontaneous human combustion or something like that. You know what I mean? They just point it at them, boom, and they combust, essentially. So this guy's unconscious. They're having a little meeting about it, and the younger one of the Vril, the younger ones are more along the mental intellect as a grown human being. More so, but closer to it, I would say, right? So this young child of the Vril-ya intercedes and is like, no, don't kill him, like, let's talk to him, let's work it out. It turns out that this younger Vril-ya, they called him Gi. I believe they're called Gi. They have their whole language and everything. In the book, they actually break down the languages. He gives you like the basics on conjunctions, adjectives, and other things, like how to actually speak their language, because he learns how to speak their language. How does he learn how to speak their language so quickly? The same force that they used in their staffs, charged with Vril, this energy, they can also set it to speak to the mind or manipulate the mind, if they will. So anyhow, so he's passed out. They're wondering what to do. A lot of people are thinking about just getting rid of him and killing him. What's up, Lisa Post? Good to see you. But they decide not to, especially because the child intervened. So they allow this guy, this human, to walk about. He dresses like them. They tell him right away. The family that finds him is like, hey, listen, like, you were brought to us. We're the highest ranking family in this particular area. we're totally willing to show you around, take you in, talk to you and stuff, but you cannot talk about your outside crazy world to everybody else. That was the only rule, really, that they laid down, because they asked him, hey, where are you from? How did you get here? What are you? And he's like, well, I'm from the surface. And they're like, what's surface? What do you mean surface? He's like, yeah, up there where the sun and the moon are and stuff. They had no idea what the sun and the moon even were. They had never heard of this. The only thing that was close to them in his description of our world was their ancient legends and their ancient myths that they considered to be fantasy and children's stories and stuff, because it had been so long since they had considered them, right? But now he's reminding them and bringing them back an ancient truth that they had forgotten. So he talks to them, tells them about their world. He's trying really hard to paint it in the best light. But he's nervous because he's honest with the reader. He's like, I tried to paint us all in the best light I could. He talked about all of our inventions and our progress as far as technology goes and our governments and stuff like that. And he tried really hard to brag, but the whole time, the child of the Vril-ya and the rest of them took pity on him. They were just shaking their heads like, wow. And then finally the child intercedes and she's like, wow, no wonder you ran away. Like, your people are so savage. And he's over here thinking he's going to get some sort of a compliment like, wow, that's cool. Right on. You guys have democracy and governments and stuff. That's great. But they're just shaking their heads like, that's terrible. You're so backwards. You're so upside down. And he doesn't understand. He thinks that he's just explained something that's worth bragging about. But they explain to him the very fact that you feel compelled to tell us your highlights, tells us that your society has not yet evolved to that point, spiritually or maturity-wise, where you recognize the value in everything in between. That you wouldn't have to tell us all of the highlights and all the good stuff, because that means the Vril are very perceptive. That means that essentially he's keeping all the bad stuff. It also means that he feels like those highlights are better than all of the in-betweens or all of the regular or all of the terrible or whatever it is. When the Vril-ya have already gotten past all of that, they look and they see the value across the board, and highlights are just other events in time to them. They don't feel the need to brag. They only see the usefulness in those highlights, and then they distribute the usefulness. Con Mueller is in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, I thought every living being needs sunlight, or is it the black sun beneath us? Good question. No, not every living being needs sunlight. We're just conditioned to think that because we've had sun worship up here on the surface for so long, right? People literally think, many religions have worshipped the sun and continue to do so all of the time. And I could see why, because it brings life and it's the giver of life. But check this out. The plants down inside of this hollow earth area, Gary, hey, thank you. LEDs think backwards, produce light, gather light. Yes, exactly. Good point, Gary. So basically, not all plants need sunlight. And the way that the plants were described within the earth was that none of them were green. They have 0 green plants down there. Green would be an anomaly, right? Most of the plant life down within this world were actually red, interestingly enough. New Troy is in the chat and says, I think it's pretty safe to say Jay would point to plasma apocalypse as an answer. Possibly. I think, this is not so much plasma apocalypse related. It is related to the blue beam. It's related to my understanding of cosmology thus far, of our local cosmology thus far in my experience. But it's not apocalyptic in nature as of yet. Right? This guy went down into the world in the 1800s, late 1800s. It could be, very well could be. But for the most part, this is probably more like hollow earth oriented, I would say, than it is apocalyptic in nature. right? But anyhow, so let's get back to it. So he meets the Vril-ya. These are the inhabitants of the inner earth in the section where he went. Now, according to them, there's actually hundreds of thousands of them and many communities that are down within the earth. They have different forms of weather down there. Their weather, they don't have the sun or the moon or anything like that. Their weather phenomena mostly exist in like earthquakes or pockets of gas or something coming up from the tunnels and stuff like that. So he goes down into the earth. He's accepted by the prominent family in the area where he was. He's instructed, don't tell anybody about this outer world where you came from, right? Basically, they would kill you. They're all being super honest. They're like, listen, we have mastered Vril. And then they explain to him Vril, and he explains it to the reader as something that sounds like something Tesla would talk about. He explains it as being electromagnetic in nature. The closest thing that he has come to his experience with Vril, and he describes it in different ways too, because he's never seen electromagnetics that give off the effects that the Vril does the way that it does. So for example, plasma, right? He talks about that there's in certain areas, certain houses, they have these fountains of this sort of liquidy substance or whatever, but it's light. It's a liquid light that's coming up out of these fountains or whatnot. And to me, he's describing plasma perfectly. They even take baths that are charged with this substance called Vril to reinvigorate them, to heal them, to keep them fresh and pure. All of the race of the Vril-ya. Let's get something out of the way too, okay? Because I know that this concept, and in particular this book, Vril, The Power of the Coming Race, was not only venerated by like the Nazi party. There's the many sects of Gnosticism and stuff like that. Of course, the Vril Society and stuff like that. Yes, they venerated the concept, but where did it come from? They found truth, or what they considered to be truth, behind the guise of fantasy within this book right here. This is one of the reasons why, or possibly could be one of the reasons why there was a secret German mission to go out to Antarctica. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. So anyhow, so this guy goes down into the earth. He's accepted by the Vril-ya. They're showing him around and everything. They show him the Vril staffs, right? And they said, look, like, you know, at like 4 years old, we give these staffs to our children. They're connected with them. It's not like they need to be taught how to use them. They do need some initial instruction on how they work, but they have this innate in tune ability to just, it's like second nature working with the Vril. And it's because they've done it for so long that information has been recorded and transcribed into our DNA, and we've passed it along. It's just become second nature, like walking or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they and the Vril are like one. That's a part of their life. And I assume that's why they're called accordingly, the Vril-ya. Flat Stuff Earth says, hi Jay, the Smurf movie breakdown was my favorite. I'm glad you liked it. That's one of my favorite introductions that I've ever done, with Gargamel in the background. Total destruction from mountain to shore. I love that part. And then we got Laura Lisa Phillips that says, hey Jay, telling my friends in America about your channel. Well, hey, that's nice. That's cool. It's good to meet you. And finally, Con Mueller says, JayDreamerZ, do they have day and night time like we have? And where's that light coming from? The light is coming from within the earth, and then there's little bubbles of light, these lanterns, that they actually are powered by Vril. So they can create Vril. They know how to just create it and manifest it. Do they have day and night? No, they do not. They have instead like nap time. Essentially, they have like quiet time. Okay. They turn down their lamps and their lanterns and stuff, and they have a quiet time, and that's like their sleep time, their nighttime. But essentially, it's always a sort of ambient amber kind of a glow. Not too bright or anything, not too dark. Everything's well lit all of the time. And whenever they hit this quiet time, they sort of just dim everything, but it's still lights are on all the time, basically. So this human goes down there. Everyone's kind of looking at him, but they're all very respectful. Like they don't come out of nowhere and say, oh my God, what are you? Where did you come from? Let me take a selfie and a picture and this and that. They don't do that. They mind their business. when appropriate, they may inquire, right? But of course, talk gets around. So this guy is found out and everyone's learning about it. So he's attracting some attention, especially from some of the females. Now, it turns out that this Vril-ya society is like, they're very fair, okay, within their politics, I should say. Okay, so the women are revered. Like a woman, they all know their places within their own society. Okay, apart from ours and our expectations about women and men and stuff, they're very much equals. And in some regard, the women are seen as more powerful. Physically, the women are bigger. They're typically pretty strong, and they hold a certain social class where, for example, a woman is allowed to just barge into a man's house and say, hey, what's up, what's going on? But a man would never do that to the woman. They have their own little ways of life down there, we'll say. So this guy goes down there. He is touched by this Vril staff a few different times. And after the third time, he's starting to pick up on their language. He's starting to recognize the words and stuff. They're able to actually put the language into his mind through the Vril staff. Interesting, right? And he's describing this as electromagnetic in nature, powerful. Now let's talk about the staff. The staff can be wielded by a 4-year-old. Right? They're very mature. The 4-year-olds are, like I said, they still have that childlike mentality, even for an advanced race. So he found that he could relate as a human more so with the children of the Vril-ya than he could the grown adults. The grown adults were more like Vulcan, kind of like, semi-serious, like they didn't laugh a whole bunch, which is weird because their whole goal in their society is happiness. That's their whole goal. They want people, every single citizen to be happy, to feel content with everything, right? Hey, Gary Lloyd just donated in the super chat and says, waking up as many people as I can in the UK. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that UK is waking up, Gary, and thanks for your donation. New Troy in the chat says, sort of reminds me of the Drow society. The Dark Elves were matriarchal as well. That's totally true. So, wow, somebody just bought a hoodie. Bradley, Francis, wow, check that out. That's kind of cool. I've never seen that before. All right, I'm going to have to go check out the merch and fix it all up for you guys. Plus, I would like to have my own merch. That'd be kind of cool. Anyways, oh, man. That got me all giddy. Thank you for getting a hoodie. I appreciate your support. That's cool. Shoot, I don't even have a hoodie. I'm going to have to get a hoodie now. Man. Anyways, how exciting. All right. Damn, what was I talking about? Let me jump back in the chat for a second. You already know Alarek says, Jay, you really, really got to take the time to go check out this channel. This guy is the smartest man I've ever seen as far as the metaphysical science and occult gnosis. Theories Apophysis YouTube channel. Okay, that sounds good. I'll probably check that out sometime. And we've got Your Mind's Tighter says, JayDreamerZ, have you read this book? It's called Outfoxing Destiny, The Nature of Vril, Harnessing the Secrets of Vital Magnetism by Valiant Thor. I have not read that book, but it sounds pretty cool. All right, so back to the story, right? So this is coming from the story of Vril, the power of the coming race. Speaking of race, I want to jump into that real quick because I'm going to be honest. The reason I have not read this book ever until just recently is because I thought it was some kind of a Hitler book. Like, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. I thought it was a Hitler book, basically. Like, in my mind, it was some kind of a Nazi propaganda book, but it's not. It's not. It has zero to do with it whatsoever. They got some stuff from the book and incorporated it, but this book has zero to do with that. If anything, check this out. The coming race, the actual Vril-ya, were described more, like their skin color was more of like a reddish one. He compared it to that of like Native Americans, but like more of a deep tone to it. And that's just the local families that he met. He said that they had, a few different types of shades and skin colors and stuff like that because they did intermarry with other tribes and stuff like that. I say and stuff like that a lot. I just picked up on that. That's okay. Anyhow, they're extremely sophisticated. Once they mastered the Vril, they used to consider themselves to be basically heathen and savages. But once they mastered the Vril, their whole way of life changed. Everything changed. They had free energy all over the place. They had unlimited power at their fingertips that a 4-year-old could wield. right? A 4-year-old could, like, you know those huge lizard creatures that I said ate like one of the humans at the beginning? They're not even afraid of those things. They go out and they kill them because they're a danger, so they could sneak up and get somebody and kill them on, being sneaky or something. But they literally employ their children. They give them staffs and they say, hey, go take care of it, because they're not afraid of it whatsoever. Jeff says, make a shirt with your face on it and I'll buy it. Are you serious? Okay. I don't know. Maybe. Semper Fi, what's up to Jonathan Anthony Humphreys? And Night Owl says, hi, what's up, Jay? Am I late to the stream? Yes, you are. Have I missed much? No, not really. And I'm watching from the UK. Right on. Good to shout out to the UK. Face shirts and all support. Why? My face is not that awesome. New Troy says the Native American or Martian red makes sense if you connect it to the Hopi ant people legends. Actually, I was thinking along the same lines. Ron G's in the chat and says, in Egyptian hieroglyphics, there's been depictions of the light bulb and the lightning rod. I've seen that as well, and I believe that we tapped into the electromagnetic spectrum in our ancient cultures that we've founded our academics upon. All right, so let's get back to the story real quick. So this guy, I'm going to wrap it up soon, okay? Because after a while, it gets kind of boring. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I get it. After 150 pages. It's like 250 pages or whatever, but I get it. It gets very political after this. So he goes down. He's describing to people the things he sees. They have what they call the uncivilized, or what I'll call the uncivilized, which are these other Vril-ya, but they're not considered Vril-ya. They're essentially not considered like human. They're also seen as animals because they're so devolved in their education and their maturity and all these things. They have not mastered the Vril whatsoever. They see them like they see us. They basically consider those beings to be the core of evil. Everything that they consider to be evil, right? Which is why they have no problem wiping out evil creatures, as they would see us, that might pose a threat to their happiness. That's all they want, is to be happy. And they don't even need to fight. All they have to do is push a button on their staff, which, by the way, can retract. It can get big. Usually they carry it like as a walking stick, like a big staff, but it can retract into like a wand. It can grow outwards, and it's got like Vril inside of it. I don't remember if it has it on both sides of the staff or just one side. I assume both sides, but it did say that there's like little buttons and mechanisms for the different like usage of the Vril. Now here's the other thing. It's not like they're just using a machine that's just some sort of electrical shocker. They use their spirit in combination with their Vril staffs. Just like in the movie Avatar, how he connected, like the Na'vi would use their like ponytails or whatever that was, and they would connect with like the dragons or the horses or whatever. They established a connection with the Vril itself. They recognized that they had Vril, that they were full of Vril, and all they had to do was connect to what appears to be outer sources of Vril. So they established this connection, and they're able to just almost will things to happen. Now, the author describes the Vril as being something that can manipulate the core of all matter. It can manipulate physical matter. It can manipulate gaseous matter. It can manipulate electrical, liquid, all this type of stuff. And they can do many different things with it. The two primary abilities are healing and various ways of healing, right? For example, you could heal the mind. You could teach a language to somebody by touching their forehead with this Vril substance and willing the information through the staff into their heads. Kind of like a Vulcan mind meld or something, right? So yes, or they can destroy. They said that like they're not afraid of, they told this guy like, we're totally not afraid of your people invading us at all. Like we could just have a few of our kids go wipe you all out. Like it's that easy. So they're not tripping on power. They already have the power that they need. They're not trying to like go acquire more land or anything. Their society is one that just, Sabrina, what's up, Sabrina Little? Welcome to my channel. Their society is one in which they're content. They're content with what they have. Now, in their society, they actually consider it a burden to be wealthy. They don't even want to be wealthy because they share the wealth and stuff like that. So the more wealth you have, the more obligation you have to like help out and make appearances and do other things. Most of them are not interested in that. Let's welcome Sabrina. Just joined the Good Vibe Tribe. Good to see you. Caleb Brooks is in the chat and says, "Hey Jay, Rob Skiba, what, died? Hold on. Mountains of the Moon. Welcome, Mountains. I have to wait for that to go away so I can read this comment. Oh no, it's over here in the chat. Rob Skiba died last night. Good vibes to him and his family. He's a good man and he's resting now. Man, that makes me sad. I met that guy and he had a good energy. I really liked him. So thanks for